Good morning, everyone. Scooter coming to you live from the Granville Guitars World Headquarters here in lovely St. Petersburg, Florida. Today is October the 23rd, 2018. Continuing work on basses for Mr. Alex Webster of Cannibal Corpse and Conquering Dystopia and several other things that you've probably heard of. Today we're working on the Zombie Blood bass, which is, as opposed to his other instruments, which are, let me shut this off, see if I get a better shot that way. Yeah, that kind of shows it a little better. His other instruments are black with red blood spatters on them. This one is red with black, and it also has the hollowed out inlays that you'll notice, which are kind of cool. The way they do that is quite intricate if you look at it. If you appreciate inlays, and guitar work in general, as I do, the inside of that is actually fretboard. So the way this is done, the inlay hole is actually what you see as red, and they leave fretboard in the middle there. So this is not another piece of black plastic in the middle. That would be easier to do. Anyway, in a wood like ebony, which is what this fretboard is, that's tricky. That's craftsmanship. Very impressive. Very nice effect. Hollowed out inlays, just like the hollowed out soul in a zombie. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, this bass is getting several things done today. Not quite as extensive as the other basses so far. It already has a speed ramp. As you can tell, this one actually split. But on closer inspection, the split is so clean and so square. I think that when this was made, two pieces of ebony were glued together to create this thing. It was glued together out on the road with super glue after it came apart, and it seems to be holding pretty well. I may or may not sand this up. It doesn't seem like it needs it, except for visual appeal. It's pretty strong. Whatever was used on the road, I'm assuming it was probably just super glue. It's working real fine. But we're going to clean this up at the very least and use the 3M adhesives that I use to adhere that to the bass. Pickups are staying the same. This bass is not getting the signature pickups. These will stay here. It is getting a tone capsule preamp, a dark glass tone capsule. It is getting the DR high beam strings gauged from 125 to 45. This bass is the main A sharp bass. The majority of the songs that Cannibal will play in a set are in the A sharp tuning, and so this is the main bass. This is the one that gets the most work. The one I did yesterday is the backup to this bass, the one I was calling Black Bart. Video number 2. That is the backup to this bass. It's tuned also in A sharp. So I thought I might go into a little more detail about how I do a setup and what I do. I've already removed the strings, as you can see, and one of the first things I will do is to just visually look the instrument over, look it over for problems, look it over for any details that might need addressing. We want to clean up the saddles on the bridge a little bit. There's quite a bit of dust accumulated, so we're going to get in there and clean a lot of that stuff out, lubricate any screws and clean those that need it. We'll start with that. Once that's completed, I'll move on to the fretboard and frets. We'll be cleaning and lubricating the fretboard with a little bit of linseed oil. Cold pressed linseed oil is what I use in my shop. Nothing finer, as far as I can tell. A lot of people use a lot of different products. I've been using cold pressed linseed oil forever, and it works very, very well. I've been using it on Alex's instruments for years. whether he realizes it or not. That's how his fingerboards are getting hydrated. He mostly likes ebony fingerboards, so you have to pay close attention to that, and special care needs to be taken because ebony is prone to cracking if it dries out. So you have to watch for that. Then after the fretboard is taken care of and the frets are taken care of, we're going to turn our attention to the tuners. Now, something I do every single time I string an instrument is to make sure that the nuts holding the tuners down from the front and any screws holding them down from the back are tight. You want to make sure your tuners are on there snug. A lot of people, when they're restringing and setting up any guitar, not just a bass, you need to make sure that the tuners are securely fastened to the headstock. You don't want to, over torque them because these can strip out. These nuts can break. So there's a fine line there, but you want them snug because a tuner that's loose and moving back and forth is not going to hold solid tune, and that's real frustrating. So that's the first area we want to approach up here. Then I'm going to install strings on the guitar. At that point, we'll examine the nut rather, and the heights of those nut slots to make sure that they're not too close to the first fret. And the way that I approach that is pretty simple. Once a string is on, I will push the string down to the 3rd fret and look at the height over the 1st fret. The string should jump just a little bit when you press it at the 1st fret, as long as you're fretting at the 3rd fret. There should be a little space underneath it. Now you need to adjust that to the taste of the player and the requirements of the player's style. This particular bass, you can tell it's the main bass because it does have some fret wear here. Alex mostly does not wear his frets very hard. He plays aggressively but precisely, and his frets don't generally wear out very quickly. He kind of lets his amp do the volume work for him, and he's able to finesse whatever sound he wants out of the instrument at that point. So that kind of covers the various steps of the setup. I'm going to go ahead and install a new preamp in this thing, as I mentioned. It's going to get a tone capsule installed, and I'll see you guys here in just a bit once I have the work ready to show you some more of my setup steps. Alright, sports fans, we're back. I have done a few things since the last clip. Cleaned up the speed ramp. I don't know whether you can see it on here. You can still kind of see the crack where it separated, but I sanded it down and applied some oil rather, of the same type that I use on the fingerboards, and it seems to be it looks much better. There's no visible crack anymore. These pickups are staying in place, these Seymour Duncans, but we have installed the new preamp as on the other basses. I'm not able to finish the electronics today because I'm still waiting on an 18-volt battery box. But since I spoke to you last, you'll remember in the last segment, or the first segment of this particular clip, I mentioned that the frets were looking a little bit rough. And I spoke with Mr. Webster just short time ago, and he has decided that we're going to go ahead and dress these frets. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what I do when I dress the frets on a guitar. Now, if you look closely, this is a bass that Alex has been playing a lot. Obviously, you can see those grooves in the fretboard. Those are created by right hand plucking motion. When you, with your left hand, fret the note, you push the string down onto the fret. Okay? Some of it, a very small percentage of that wear, that's my tea, it's ready. A very small percentage of that wear is how hard you push it against the fret. But the majority of that wear comes from how hard you're plucking. You can see that wear as the string moves in a very, very small space back and forth and digs itself a little trench. After a while of this moving back and forth, let's see if I can get there even tighter. After a while of all of this back and forth motion, will you focus for me, honey? Come on, you can do it. There it's coming in. After a while of all of this moving back and forth motion, you know, the string will meet right here, and it vibrates back and forth because it's you know, it's being struck, and then the string vibrates, and as it does, it moves back and forth and cuts these little trenches into the fret. What happens is that the location of the fret is not the front edge of the fret here as you see it, okay? The location of the fret where it's installed is figured on the center of the fret tang itself, okay? These frets have to be crowned off so that every fret meets its note right there in the center of the crown. What's happened is this note, for instance, is now sharp as compared to where it's supposed to be, ever so slightly. This is not a phenomenon that's typically noticed as much on bass guitars because you're more often than not only playing one note at a time. So fret wear is not something that's always that much of a concern with a bass as it is on a guitar. It's usually much more of a concern on a guitar where you're playing multiple notes down in this area and they could be out of tune with each other because their witness points are now in the wrong places. They've all moved sharp in relation to their normal positions, and that might not be a problem, but you don't play all the notes the same number of times, so they've moved sharp by varying degrees. This makes for a lot of problems for intonation and proper tonalities that are in tune with the rest of the instruments in the band, whatever those instruments might be. In the case of Cannibal Corpse, it's two other guitars. So we've decided to do what I call, and what is commonly referred to as, a fret dress and level. A couple of things. The first step is the nut is going to be removed from the guitar. I'm going to set the neck as straight as I can set it with no strings on it. Okay, the neck, not the frets, the neck. I'm going to measure that and adjust this with the truss rod so that it's as level as I can make it. Then we're going to black off these frets with a black Sharpie so I can see where all the fret wear is, and then using a radius sanding block to match the radius of the frets and fretboard, we'll sand these frets off so that they're all level with each other, and we're going to have to sand down past all of this damage here. So in other words, the lowest point in the damage, the lowest point in these little dimples, is now going to be the highest point on the new fret tops. Once those are all leveled off, we're going to go back and re-crown each one. We're going to give it back its rounded shape and its proper pointy witness point in the middle of the fret. So intonation then becomes a constant for all frets, not just the ones down low. It's just that these are where most of the wear is. The first 6 or 7 frets are pretty worn. So those are the steps. I'm going to remove the nut. We're going to black the frets after we've set the neck straight, and then I'm going to sand them down level with each other, and then we're going to crown. I'll make a few little clips along the way. I'm not going to show you the exact process because I'm shooting all of this myself, and that can be problematic while you're trying to work. So yeah, I'm going to pop off the nut and get busy on this bad boy. Alright, here we are at the next step. As you can see, the nut has been removed. It's a pretty simple procedure. Used a radius sanding block, the same one that I'm going to use to sand these frets off even with each other, and a dead blow hammer, and just give it a few taps, and it usually pops right off. This one came off nice and clean. Now you can see that I have blacked the tops of these frets with a Sharpie, And as I'm sanding down, where I see the black is a low spot. So the idea is to carefully sand all of these fret tops until we don't see any more black. That's the general idea. There's a little more finesse to it than just that, but that's what we're going to do. Okay, so that's the next step in this process right here. The neck has been set straight so that all the fret tops will be level, regardless of where the neck is set. So here we go. Let's sand them down. Alright, here we can see I've taken maybe 10 strokes with the radius sanding block, and we can see where the sand block is removing material. It's removing material where you see silver, and it's not removing material yet where you see the black splotches. You can see the second fret is already close to being ready. Third fret is pretty much there. A few more strokes and some of these higher frets are going to be ready to go. Most of the wear, the deepest wear, was down low here. Also, I'm not really sure why. This was a limited edition base and thus may have been made more handwork than some of their others. The radius up towards the body is flatter than it is down low. It's a compound radius. It's more of a 20 in the last 10 frets and more of a 16-inch radius down low. So I'm having to use different blocks for different areas of the sand or the fretboard process to maintain what the feel that it had and give us new fret material to play on. Okay, so that's the first part of this process. Okay, a few more strokes. And you can see we're getting even closer. As a matter of fact, there's the first fret, and we've got one tiny little area underneath the third string, the one that runs right down the center of the neck. One little notch there. A few more strokes should take care of that. The rest of the frets are pretty much ready to go, ready to get crowned off and get their crowns reintroduced. You can see all the way up the fretboard, they're nice and ready to go. So that is what we're looking at right now. A few more strokes with the sanding block, and we'll get into the crowning and polishing phase. All right, here we go. They're all nicely leveled off. I've got my fret tops where I want them. I've checked them all to make sure they're all still level with each other, and they are. So the next part of this process is going to be to crown the frets. The way I do that is I use a diamond fret file that has a curvature preset into it, and I'm going to file these bad boys down until that crown is achieved, re-achieved from where it was previously. Now, here we go. Find my diamond fret file here, my long-suffering Stuart McDonald diamond fret file. And the way I start with this, let me back this out of the way, it's just about like this. I'm gonna get some reflective light going here. Now you can really see at that point, I hope it's showing it up on the video, you can see what we're filing away. We're filing away the sides. This file is curved, as you can see. It has the crown already ground into it, and it's coated with diamonds, industrial diamonds on the underside. And it's going to give me back my fret shaped crown. watch what you're doing while you go. Remove the material frequently and watch your progress. And we're going to file until that line that we're looking at gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's almost gone. There'll be a very, very tiny thin line there, almost impossible to see with the naked eye. But that will mean that we've crowned it all the way around again the way it was, as opposed to this fret here, which has yet to be crowned and is still flat all the way. Okay, what that means is that since it's flat on top, all of the notes coincidentally will be flat, or sharp rather. A flat top fret. Your witness points for each note are going to be sharp. In other words, this direction. We need to move them all back towards the middle of the fret so that every note is in tune with where it's supposed to be. Okay, so that's how I crown frets. After that, we're going to polish them really nice so they're nice and buttery on top. I'm going to go ahead and set the camera aside for a while I get a text message there. I'm going to set the camera aside for a while, and I'm going to do this crowning and polishing, and we'll come back after I'm done. Okay, we're back on this today. It's the next morning from the first part of this video. It took me the rest of the day to crown all these frets, and I cleaned the fretboard, oiled everything up, and we're good to go. Now here is that offending first fret that we were looking at previously, and as we can see, it's got a nice clean crown all the way across. You can see that it's nicely rounded and the witness point is dead center, and it's been polished up so that it's going to feel nice and smooth and buttery, and we did that with all the frets. They're all ready to get back out there and go again. And believe me, Cannibal Corpse goes. Nobody, if you're not acquainted with Cannibal Corpse, and we forgive you if you're not, it's not everybody's bag, but they are some of the hardest working people I know, not just in show business, but in virtually anything you can think of business-wise where you have to work for a living. They just returned from a tour of Europe where they played 30+ dates. Immediately proceeded from there to go to South America and played, I believe, 21 concerts. So, and now they've had, I think it's going to be a total of like 2.5 weeks off, and now they're going to tour the U.S. for a month. So they're hard-working guys, and their instruments take a lot of wear and tear. So, yeah, this happens sometimes, and we've got to do it. I did receive the 18-volt battery box for this bass, so we're going to be able to get that installed and finish this thing up, get the setup completed, knobs on, etc., and get it completed here. I've got a week before Alex shows up to collect his instruments for the tour. So that's ideal as far as I'm concerned, because then these instruments have a chance to sit for a while and settle in with the changes that I've made and the work that I've done, so that they're good and settled by the time he's ready to take them out on the road. So frets are done on this bad boy, the Zombie Blood bass. Incidentally, this bass is featured on the last Cannibal Corpse record, Red and Black, in a very small way. It's actually anywhere you hear a bass guitar on Red and Black by itself, in other words, featured all by itself, this is going to be the bass that you hear. It was used for most of that stuff, a few breaks and a few riffs. The vast majority, 95% of Red Before Black, was recorded with the bass that I'm going to do a video on probably tomorrow. That'll be part 4 of all of this. Also in that part 4, we're going to discuss Alex's live signal chain, so you'll want to tune in for that. Alright, I'm going to put strings on this thing, finish up the wiring, and we'll be done. Okay, just in the interest of completeness here, just want to take a quick peek back here at the electronics we've added to the zombie blood base. As you can see, I was unable to completely remove the back plate. This one screw has rusted itself in place into its insert, so rather than force that, we just slide the plate out of the way, and it is what it is. The other screws are able to come out easily. So once again, dark glass electronics tone capsule preamp. We've arranged it with master volume over here. This is the high mid control, low mid control, and bass control. Brand new jack, and also brand new 18-volt battery holder with brand new batteries in it. So yeah, this one electronically is ready to fly. Okay, last segment of this, we're all finished. Frets are all finished up, strings are installed, neck is set, truss rod wise, intonation has been set. I played it for a few minutes. Actually, I played it for about 20 minutes. It really is a wonderful instrument. It really is. I can kind of see why Alex favors it just slightly over his other basses. It seems to have a more sustaining presence across the mid-range areas of its frequency response than his other Spectres. It's very subtle, and you only notice it after you're playing it for probably 20 or 30 minutes, but it's there. So I can definitely see why he favors this bass. Just an incredible piece of craftsmanship from Spectre. Once again, quick review. Let's go down here. We got new electronics, courtesy of Dark Glass Electronics. It's a tone capsule preamp. Quick review. Master volume here. Both pickups are hardwired to that master volume. No balance control. This is a high mid control, low mid control, and bass control. And we fixed up the speed ramp. It did have a glued crack there where the seam was. It had come asunder from when it was manufactured, and now it's you can't even see it. So it's back to its normal state. We've stuck that on with the 3M adhesive double stick. Did a fair amount of work to the bridge. This bridge was awfully dirty. Disassembled it, cleaned it up real nice. Got it basically ready for the next go around here. Also to review, we got the DR high beam strings, and I got a message wanting to know the exact gauges, not just the top and the bottom. There they are. DR high beams, 125 on the bottom, 45 on the top, 125, 105, 85, 65, 45. And again, those strings are tuned in their tenor tuning. A sharp on the low string. Let's turn it up a little bit here. A sharp on the bottom, D sharp for that string there, the 4th string, G sharp, C sharp, and F sharp up top. These speed ramps are awfully nice. Just a great idea. It's just a nice, comfortable place, and tonally, this instrument really loves to be plucked in that general area. It just seems to love being plucked right there. So anyway, we got the master volume here, high mid, boost and cut. Low mid is already boosted right now. And then bass. you can really hear the different mid bands just so you can get an idea. If you cut the bass control, you can really hear. Here's the high mid. And here's the low mid. So there you go. We're all finished with this one. As I mentioned in the last little section, this bass makes an appearance a couple of times on the Red Before Black album by Cannibal Corpse. Most typically where you hear the bass by itself, this is the bass that you're going to hear. The vast majority of everything that, all the bass parts for that album were recorded with the bass I'm going to do next in part 4 of this series. We're calling that one the Red Before Black, but this is the Zombie Blood Spectre. Limited edition, very limited as a matter of fact. They only made 12 of these worldwide. There may be 1 or 2 prototypes beyond that, but this particular one is a serial number of 12. I'm not going to tell you which one, but the serial number on the back says a certain number of 12. So, a very limited edition. If you can find one, you'll probably have to pay a pretty penny for it, but very, very nice instrument indeed. So that's all I know for today on this particular instrument. Once again, I'm Scooter here at Granville Guitars in St. Petersburg, Florida. If you'd like to know anything else about what we do here, seek us out on the web at www.granvilleguitars.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. And go check out our blog at WordPress, A View from the Granville Bench. That's all I know for today. See you in part 4.